It's the start of a big week of peace talks aiming to end the war in Ukraine. American officials say they believe Kyiv is ready to move forward in a ceasefire process with Russia ahead of talks in Saudi Arabia. President Zelensky will also travel there, although he won't be taking part in negotiations. Officials from Ukraine and the US will meet for the first time since the clash between their two leaders last week. All this comes as the Ukrainian military said that Russia launched 176 drones during an overnight attack. Our correspondent Thomas McGill reports.
A weekend of deadly attacks by an unrelenting Russia. This is the Donetsk region in the east, where 11 people were killed and 40 wounded, including 6 children, according to Ukrainian officials. Attacks like this have intensified across the country in recent days. This one in Odessa in the south, after the US paused military aid, intelligence sharing and now some satellite imagery. Despite this, the US is determined to forge ahead with talks in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday and says they believe Ukraine's leader is ready to move forward with its demand for a ceasefire. President Zelensky will not attend the talks personally, but will meet the Saudi leader Mohammed bin Salman today. Senior US officials, led by the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, will then meet a delegate from Ukraine on Tuesday to discuss the terms of a potential truce.
I'm confident that the meeting will be productive. We in Ukraine are committed to this. We are very much so. We will do our best to ensure that Ukrainian interests are taken into account in the right way.
Ahead of the talks and speaking on Fox News, President Trump described the war as a mess.
Are you comfortable with that? The fact that you walked away and Ukraine may not survive?
Well, it may not survive anyway, but, we have some weaknesses with Russia. It takes two. Look, it was not going to happen, that war, and it happened. So now we're stuck with this mess.
But just a few hours ago, he suggested the US is easing its pause on sharing military intelligence.
We want to do anything we can to get Ukraine to be serious about getting something done.
You haven't been alone. We gave you
The relationship between America and Ukraine remains fragile after a heated exchange in the White House earlier this month. And Europe has also come under fire from President Trump, who wants it to step up and spend more on defence. The UK has already committed to increasing its spending on defence and said it's willing to put troops on the ground in Ukraine. But what's not clear is how many other European countries could join a so-called coalition of the willing. The US knows Ukraine is coming to these latest talks on the back foot. And if progress towards peace is to be made, then compromise will also be needed. Thomas McGill, BBC News.
We can get more analysis on those talks. We can speak to Senior Fellow in the War Studies Department at King's College London, Nawaf Obaid. Thank you for joining us on BBC News. So give us a sense of Saudi Arabia's position in all of this, because it's been able to maintain close ties with Russia, Ukraine and the United States. How has it managed that?
Well, because it's really positioned itself over the last decade to nurture and to be able to position itself as, if you want, a global interlocutor. It's had a superb relationship with the Trump administration, the first one. It has been able to co-manage the global energy markets for the last decade or so through the OPEC plus mechanism with the Russian president, and as well as it's been able to be the center and the source of numerous prisoner releases between the Ukrainians and the Russians. So in a way, if you look deeper into it, you see Saudi Arabia is one of the very few countries that has a global consequence that is consequential enough to be able to be doing what it's doing today.
And during this war, it's provided Ukraine with millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in humanitarian aid. At the same time, it's continued an economic partnership with Russia. How would you compare the two? And would Saudi Arabia still be considered neutral in this conflict?
Well, the economic partnership with Russia, it's been more of an energy management of the global energy market. So as I was earlier saying, through the OPEC plus mechanism, the two largest oil exporters, be it Saudi Arabia and Russia, were able to manage it and to make sure that there was no disruption in economic global disruption due to the war between the Russians and Ukrainians. And on the other side, as you correctly pointed out, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been key in providing a lot of humanitarian aid to the Ukrainians. So it's not one versus the other. They're relatively neutral, and at the same time, in the person of the Crown Prince, he's been able to have an enormous amount of credibility, trust, and above all, influence to be able to bring all the warring parties to Saudi Arabia to hopefully end this war.
Nawaf Obaid from King's College London, thank you for sharing your analysis with us here on BBC News.